Thanos may be gone, but he won't be forgotten anytime soon. The Mad Titan casts a large shadow over the MCU that may never be replicated. He's not only one of the best villains in all of cinema, but Thanos was also the most terrifying villain in the MCU's history, and that's really saying something given all of his competition. Today's video is all about Thanos, and we'll try to pinpoint what exactly made him so incredibly scary. So quick, before Thanos decides to snap us all out of existence, let's get into it right now. A hero is only as good as their villain. A hero by themselves can be interesting, but it's when our protagonists are suddenly faced with a complex, interesting, and terrifying villain that we really see the hero shine. In the early days of the MCU, the studio was more focused on origin stories of the heroes we would come to know and love rather than giving enough character development to its villains. And that's 100% fair. In the early days, we still had to be sold on these heroes on the big screen, and that meant devoting all the time to their development rather than the bad guys. That meant early baddies like Obadiah Stane and the Red Skull were pretty one-note villains. Why are they evil? Who cares? We just want to see Iron Man and Captain America beat them up. The one exception in the MCU's early days was Loki, appearing in Thor. Loki had a more tragic and complicated upbringing than his fellow villains, and it was that sort of emotional pathos the audience responded well to. It's no wonder why Loki was chosen as the main villain for the Avengers, as he was the only one with the charisma, charm, and menace to serve as a compelling enough threat to unite the Avengers together. But we all know that Loki was just a small piece of the puzzle. There was someone greater, more menacing, and definitely more purpler waiting in the wings. The mid-credit scene of Avengers gave us our very first clip of Thanos, kickstarting a collision path that would take another 12 movies to pay off. And maybe that's one of the big reasons Thanos was so terrifying even before he made a proper appearance. It was that slow build that gave us all a sense that something big was coming, a shadow of epic proportions that inched along at a snail's pace as the Mad Titan only made appearances in post-credit scenes and one small supporting role in Guardians of the Galaxy. But we know exactly what his end goal was, to find all the Infinity Stones and decide what shade of purple he wanted to be, even when the Avengers weren't aware of the huge threat that was coming their way. And when Thanos finally did make his grand appearance in Avengers Infinity War, it did not disappoint. There was a legitimate fear that Thanos would not live up to the major hype surrounding Infinity War. After all, your expectations can only be so high after anticipating this showdown for years. Thankfully for us, and regrettably for the Avengers, Thanos proved to be every bit as terrifying in person as we built him up to be in our heads. But what about him physically made him so scary? Well, the first big reason is his power level. You don't get to Thanos' position in life without being incredibly strong, and the movie brilliantly showcased just how strong Thanos is in his first scene. Not only do we open Infinity War on the intense aftermath of the Asgardian slaughter, but even Thor seems beaten and broken after fighting Thanos. But there's one Avenger missing from this fight. Suddenly, Hulk shows up to pummel Thanos, much like how he turned Loki into just a puny god all those movies ago, only that's not what happens. Hulk gets in some solid punches, but Thanos barely breaks a sweat. He quickly subdues Hulk, who's one of the strongest Avengers on the team. For Thanos to deal with him like he's no more than an annoying fly was a wake-up call for all of us that Thanos was not messing around. Heck, it even got the Hulk so scared that he refused to come out and fight for the rest of the movie. Sure, the directors have said the reason Hulk stayed hidden is because Hulk decided he didn't want to be Bruce's savior every time it came down to fighting, but come on. It totally looks like the Hulk was seriously hurt, that there was an opponent out there who didn't even flinch after a good old Hulk smash. And then the rest of the movie continued to show how physically strong the Mad Titan was as the Avengers threw everything they had at him, but no one was strong enough to take him down. And of course, we have to mention the tiny detail about how he's one of the only people in the universe able to wield multiple Infinity Stones and use the gauntlet without dying, not once, but twice. We all saw what happened when everyday people try to harness the power of the Infinity Stones. Red Skull was vaporized, and most people who touched the Power Stone were turned to dust instantly. And the only reason Peter Quill was able to hold it for a short period of time was because he was part Celestial. Now Thanos, on the other hand, could wield all the stones together. We all remember what happened when Iron Man wielded all the stones together to use the gauntlet. R.I.P. Iron Man. And even Hulk was seriously injured by bringing everyone back to life. The only reason Hulk seemed to survive was because of how much gamma radiation was involved with the gauntlet in the first place. So it's like he was literally made for that. But let's remember Thanos for a second. The first time he snapped his fingers, he was already super weak. Thor had driven Stormbreaker, the supposed Thanos ender, into Thanos' chest, and it was not a light flesh wound. It's not something most people would walk away from. It looked like Thanos only had a few breaths left, which he of course used to complete his plan and escape. Think about that. He was so strong that he was able to use the gauntlet while gravely injured and still survive. And not only that, he was able to use the gauntlet again just a short time later to destroy the stones once and for all. If that's not a sign of one of the strongest beings in the galaxy, then we don't know what is. But there's an even bigger reason that Thanos is so terrifying as an MCU villain, and it's not just because he could pulverize most of the Avengers with one punch. No. What makes Thanos so scary is that part of us can understand his motivations and his drive. The best villains are the ones who we can relate to on some level, even if their plan is horribly twisted. Thanos wants to wipe out half of the universe, not because he's some crazed lunatic, but because in his eyes, he's saving the universe from itself. Let's compare Thanos to someone like Caecilius from Doctor Strange. Caecilius also wanted to bring destruction to the universe by summoning Dormammu, but the reason Caecilius is such a bland villain is because there's nothing more to his motivation than that. He's just a bad guy. Now, Thanos, on the other hand, has a great reason for what he's doing. He saw the destruction of his homeworld because of overpopulation, and even though he tried hard to convince his people that they were on the path to total annihilation, no one listened to him. So deep down, he's determined to not let what happened to his homeworld happen to any other planet in the universe. There's a sense of tragedy to Thanos in that he may feel what he's doing is wrong, but it's still the right thing to do, and only he can be the one to ultimately save the universe. If you're looking at it in a twisted way, Thanos is the protagonist of Avengers Infinity War, as we follow his quest to get each one of the stones as he grows more and more powerful. But you know what they say about power, right? With great power comes great responsibility. And right when Thanos is on the verge of getting one of the final stones, he has to sacrifice the only thing he loves in the world in order to continue his mission to save the galaxy. Hearing that, doesn't it sound like Thanos is some tragic hero? And that's what makes Thanos the most terrifying MCU villain of all. Not because he can smash Hulk, not because he can throw planets at Iron Man, but rather he's a villain we can relate to and sort of understand. Which is why it's so disappointing that this tragic version of Thanos was gone for Endgame. Where Infinity War Thanos was complex and relatable, Endgame Thanos just seemed like another generic strong bad guy. In the end, he devolved into a villain that wanted to destroy the universe and remake it in his own vision. And you could argue that this reveals that Thanos was never as deep as we thought he was, and the Mad Titan was actually just a crazy bad guy whose plan had serious flaws in it. And on some level, we agree on that. But it was just a shame for the characterization to feel so different from Infinity War to Endgame. He was still really scary in Endgame, don't get us wrong, but in a different way than he was in Infinity War. It would be like if they brought back Killmonger for Black Panther 2 and now his plan was just to destroy Wakanda out of revenge. That would be a cool story, but it would rob the moral complexity Killmonger had as a villain in the first film. That's what they did with Thanos in Endgame. But there's one final reason that makes Thanos the most terrifying villain ever to grace the MCU, and that's the enduring legacy he ended up creating. Every MCU villain wants to alter or change the world in some way, but they are usually stopped before too much damage is done. Sure, maybe some buildings collapse or a small number of people get hurt, but the heroes usually save the day before the general public is even aware of the threat. The thing about Thanos is that everyone knows his name, and everyone will remember what he did. Thanos fundamentally changed the entire universe forever. When he snapped away half of all life, the half who was left behind was shown to be miserable and unable to move on for 5 whole years. And the ones who were dusted and then came back to life suddenly found themselves amongst loved ones who had aged 5 years and moved on. No matter how you try to spin that, something like that is traumatizing and will have long-lasting ramifications for years to come. It's respectable that the MCU writers didn't go the easy way out. They could have had some Infinity Gauntlet magic where Hulk reversed time with his snap and made it so nobody was ever erased. But we know that's not what happened. Everyone came back 5 years later with no memory about what happened and still the same age that they were when they were dusted. This is now a universe that has to reacclimate itself and it will never be the same again. In a way, Thanos won, because even though the world and universe is back to normal, you have to figure that a lot of humans and aliens will be more conscientious about their carbon footprint and resource use. We know that we would, and we imagine a lot of people in the universe might need some serious counseling and therapy over everything that happened, but that sort of large shadow will have a long-lasting effect across the entire galaxy. No way wiping out half the life in all the universe won't awaken some dormant threat that will be the next big opponent for the Avengers to face. What Thanos did could pave the way for the next big bad like Annihilus or Galactus, who will look at the Mad Titan's plan and decide to enact their own plan for complete universe balance and or annihilation. So thanks for that, Thanos. No matter how you look at it, Thanos is straight up scary and one of the MCU's most terrifying villains. On one hand, we hope the MCU continues this trend and can replicate what made Thanos so great with another villain down the line. But on the other hand, we're not sure our hearts can take another Thanos-level threat. We definitely think Thanos is one of the best MCU villains ever, but what do you guys think? Do you think he's the most terrifying villain ever in the MCU, or does another villain deserve that top spot? Be sure to let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to CBR for more awesome MCU content. Thanks for watching.